Hi everyone, and good morning because it's Friday morning. We are Ana and Sara, and today we're gonna talk to you about neuroscience. First of all, we're gonna give to you a brief introduction and history so that you get to understand the basics of neuroscience. Afterwards, we're gonna talk about some curiosities and discoveries that have been done, and finally, we're gonna relate neuroscience to business, talking about neuromarketing, its advantages and its inconvenience. Neuroscience is a field of science that studies the nervous system and how its different elements interact to understand the basis of human behavior. It is a biological study of the brain. Its discoveries have been useful throughout history, as it was discovered many years ago in the late 18th century. Neuroscience covers many areas, from health, for example in the case of Alzheimer, where the goal of neuroscience is to understand the disease and try to reduce its progress. But it is also very useful in the business field, as we will see later on. Now we're gonna talk about neuroscience and its history, because we thought it was very interesting the evolution it has done. It all began when Aristotle had the idea that the center of the intellect was in the heart. Later on, it was proposed that the brain was the seat of the thought and sensations. Afterwards, different scientists discovered over the years that the brain has specialized centers for different functions. And today, it is known how these functions interrelate and the reason for many diseases, among other things. Now, we're gonna talk about some interesting curiosities that have been found out throughout neuroscience. For example, did you know that we use the brain to perceive pain, but it is impossible for it to feel it? Or that 95% of the decisions we make daily are subconscious and not rational? And this is why the importance of neuromarketing, as we will see afterwards. Also, were you aware of the impact of digitalization? Because smartphones are killing your brain, and more than 140 different proteins in the brain are negatively impacted by exposure to electromagnetic frequencies. Seriously, the impact of digitalization is not only positive. Here we have some examples of important discoveries and unsolved problems. Neuroscience has found out many different things. However, the brain is so complex that there are even more unsolved problems. Some examples of important discoveries could be fewer side effects for leukemia, which is the most common cancer in children, or a compound that has cannabis that can help reduce alcohol and marijuana addictions, which is really ironic. As you can see, these discoveries can be really helpful for society. In relation to business aspects, which are those that may interest us the most, neuroscience has shown that human beings do not act rationally, but that feelings and intuitions usually intervene. In other words, it is very difficult to foresee society because there are many secrets behind the brain. Although neuroscience has evolved over the years, there are still many unsolved issues. And it seems impossible to understand the irrational part of the brain. Some examples of these unsolved problems could be: why do we dream? Where are our memories stored? Or can they be recovered? There have been various discoveries about why people act in a certain way in certain situations, but there are still problems to solve regarding the subconscious and intuition. An interesting aspect when we talk about neuroscience and business, as we will see next.
And now we're going to talk about the neuromarketing. We will start by giving a definition. Neuromarketing is the application of neuroscience to marketing. Neuromarketing includes the direct use of brain imaging, scanning, or other brain activity measurement technology to measure a subject's response to specific products, packaging, advertising, or other marketing elements. So, how does this mind work? It responds to concise input. What does it mean this? The simple, the better. It is emotional. We are talking about machines that try to appeal the emotional part of humans. Also is selfish. The topic is treat yourself, which means that neuromarketing causes that our decisions are the most beneficial for us. Also, it cares more about the beginnings and the endings. This science thinks that what is in the middle is less important than what is in the outside. And last but not least, it likes visual stimulus. Now we're going to talk about neuromarketing in business. Upon all the factors we can find, these are the 7 most important ones. Neuromarketing explains that one of the most important things is to trust in the customer and to make the customer trust you. One example could be the free trial for streaming subscription without asking the customer its card details. The second one is attract. Neuromarketing explains that it's important the color, the language, and the simplicity of the message. The third one is the multisensory stimulation. It's important that the customer perceive that the expectations the neuromarketing has created have been achieved and exceeded by the product. Number 4 is help the viewer. In advertisement, it is important to give instructions in order to help the customer. For example, if you are selling shoes, in the advertisement it is possible to show a person watching their feet. Number 5 is giving limited options, which means that it is important to give a balanced number of options. If you give a lot, you can stress the consumer, but also they want to have the option to choose. Number 6 is test. The strategies have to be tested, and it's important to analyze the feedback in order to improve your neuromarketing in business. And the last one is tell stories. Neuromarketing has studied that one of the facts that engage the most the customers it is to explain attractive stories. After all the information given, now we're going to talk about the advantages of neuroscience. The first one could be that it discovers how we act and it encourages us to buy. So it boosts the economy. The second one, it is that it has applications to education and it improves the education. So this is better for our futures. With neuroscience, the doctors are able to see if a person is suffering by analyzing their stimulus, and they have the possibility to decide if the patient has to be disconnected in order to stop their suffering. Also, it reduces the crime. Because of the neuroscience, it is possible to cure the impulsive and aggressive behavior of some criminals, and it helps also them to the reinsertion. The last one is that neuroscience improves some of our neuronal functions as language, maths, and memory. Now we're going to contrast them with the inconvenience. One of the branches of the neuroscience, which is neuromarketing, implies a high market research cost. Another one is the manipulation and the debate with the ethical morality. The third one is the loss of humanization. Neuroscience implies the abuse of the brain study and requires experimentation with humans. Also, neuroscience promotes innovation and technology, which are two factors that are generating negative impacts in today's societies also. In relation to health, it can lead to an abuse of power by doctors over the right to disconnect a patient. There may be cases where elderly or very seriously ill people who will not survive are found and the doctor abuses that right to hasten death for things such as organ donation or use of hospital resources. The problem with the crime reduction it is that it is true that it can reduce the biological factor of the criminals, but it cannot act against the cultural factor. Also, science evolves faster than culture, and that has a lot of impact on some actions and on our society, because sometimes we are not prepared for the technological advances. And last, it can cause long-term neurological damage. So, after analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of neuroscience, do you think that the studies have a negative or positive impact on society? Think hard about the answer because now the debate arrives. Thank you very much for listening.